We are in Harmattan season again, and you probably have seen your fish change in behavior and sometimes even die. In fact, if you are experiencing this, you are not in there alone. That is the behavior of Harmattan season. Harmattan affects all stages of fish, but newly stocked fingerlings or juveniles are affected most. For instance, this is our pond. If you have followed us for a while, you will notice that we recently harvested this fish. We just stocked them a few days ago. I've not been to the farm. Yesterday, I went there. They reported to me how the fingerlings are dying. I gave them remedies on what to do, and we are implementing the same, and we begin to see changes. In fact, in this video, I want to take you through the effects of Harmattan on fish. More importantly, fingerlings or juveniles or jumbo, that are small new stock fish, and then how to remedies or how to prevent this, and when it happens, how do you manage your farm to avoid mortality. If you're new to this channel, my name is Abdulaziz Issa. I have a bachelor degree in development education. I'm a fish farmer and I provide fish farm consultancies. And all we do in this channel here to share fish farm tips based on our experience and research. So please, if you're not subscribed to this channel, please do so and let's learn together. Now, Harmattan season has a lot of effects, and as I mentioned, it affects catfish, not only catfish, but specifically catfish here, and they are affected in several stages: the fingerling stage, the juvenile stage, the table size stage, grow all the stages. But the fingerling stage or the juvenile stage is affected most. Why? Because at that stage, the immune system is not yet fully developed. At that stage, they still have smaller body, and it gives dryness, or it gives heat up easier and faster. And that stage, so you just transported them to the farm, and because of that, they are prone to this weather condition. Now, if you're hearing Harmattan for the first time, Harmattan is a season where we mostly experience in West Africa, where we have dry wind and then low humidity and also very cold weather, especially during night and in the morning. And this affects fish because catfish are cold-blooded animals. So very cold temperature affects them, and especially fingerlings. Now let's look at the effects of Harmattan on catfish. First and foremost, cold temperature. During Harmattan season, in the night and in the morning, the weather temperature gets cold. And as I mentioned, because catfish, they are cold-blooded animals. When the weather gets cooler, it affects them. And the way it affects them is that their metabolism gets slower. They slow down in metabolism, and that indirectly affects their digestion. And that also affects their appetite. So generally during Harmattan season, catfish tends to eat slower. And because they eat slower and they have low metabolism and they have low digestion, they grow slow as well. And these are the effects of the cold temperature in Harmattan season. The second effect of Harmattan on catfish is stress and weak immune system. In fact, they are stressed up, whether you have transported them newly or they are already existing in the pond. And because the temperature is cold and they reduce a lot of things, they stress up. And that stress has weakened their immune system. And that weakness of immune system has prone them to diseases. So they become vulnerable to diseases or infections and possible mortality. So the effects of that is that it weakens their immune system and that subjects them to diseases, infection, and mortality. So try to avoid that. Is going to help you a lot. And like I said, at the end of this video, we will tell you practical tips on how to prevent that. The third thing has to do with reduce feeding and activities. In fact, during Harmattan season, because the weather is cold, the fish find themselves under the bottom of the pond. And because they are there, yes, they are finding shelter. That place is a bit hotter for them. So even coming up to eat or to play or to be active becomes problem for them. So because they are under, when you give them feed, they don't even want to react or come and eat. Yes, and their movement in the pond slows down. And as I mentioned, their metabolism slows down. So now, during that time, when you are feeding them, you find out that they don't eat much. And that is when you should be very careful. Because if you keep feeding them the way you used to feed them, then you are likely going to cause disease and mortality. So I'll tell you later how to feed them the right way during Harmattan season so that you will not have problems. And that brings us to the fourth point, that is poor water quality. In fact, in as much as you are giving them the feed and they don't take, the consequences is that it leads to poor water quality. Already the water is cold, and that coldness is a problem for them. And now that you also feed them and they don't consume all the feed or they don't eat it and it decomposes into the water, it also increases the ammonia. And when the ammonia level becomes high, then that brings us to another serious implication: diseases, weakening of immune system, and even mortality. So poor water quality is also one of the reasons or the effects of Harmattan season on catfish, especially fingerlings or juveniles or the smaller size. The fifth effects of Harmattan on catfish or on fish is water scarcity. In fact, during this period, because of the wind, the dry wind blowing, evaporation is higher and the water bodies tend to dry up in some places, and this becomes problem because already you have poor water quality. In complement to the unavailability of water, it makes it more difficult to raise fish. So if you have or if you don't have good systems in place and your water dries up and you don't have backup water, then you are doomed. So in this period, evaporation is higher, water bodies dries up, and it affects fish production. And the final one has to do with fingerling scarcity. In fact, in as much as you buy the fingerlings, stock them during this period, and they are dying, it is the same for hatchery services. In fact, if not experienced or well-equipped service provider, most fingerlings producers also lose their fingerlings. Because of that, fingerlings are not that available during this period, and that even shoot the cost of fingerlings at this period. So now, because of that, many people who produce fingerlings, they stop production, and that time too the fingerlings also reduce. But this is a win-win case. Why am I saying this? I am saying this because in as much as the fingerlings is scarce, those also buying fingerlings also slow down. And because they slow down, if they have more produced fingerlings and there's no buyers, then the cost also comes down. So sometimes it's 50-50. It could be advantageous for who want to buy fish and stock because the cost will die down, or it will also be advantageous for those who hatch, depending on the situation. But all these two realities are on the ground and it's happening. Now, having looked at the 6 effects of Harmattan on catfish, now let's look at what to do during Harmattan season to avoid or to prevent your fish or your fingerlings from dying. And when you have done that, then you are safe. And if you're not able to do this and it even happens, what do you do to prevent or to avoid that. Please, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please do so. All of these channels to share fish facts based on your experience and research. If you are watching me for the first time, please subscribe, like, and share so that other fish farmers will get it and learn. Now, what do you do? That is the question. Because our elders say that no matter how tall a walking stick is, it always has its handle. No matter how big a problem is, there's always a solution. So what are the solutions for Harmattan season fish farming? First has to do with stocking your fingerlings at the right time. What do I mean? At the right time, normally we transport fingerlings in the morning, early morning, to avoid stress up. And remember, some rules are not permanent. There are always exceptional to rules. Now, we transport fingerlings early morning to avoid stress up. But when it comes to Harmattan season, it usually occurs from November to February in West Africa. At that time, the weather is cold in the evening, very cold in the morning. So now, transporting the fingerlings at that time and stocking them at that time is not ideal because you bring them from a very cold container which you transported them in, and you're introducing them to another very cold pond water. So this is not right. So the right thing to do is that let it get hot a bit late in the morning or early afternoon, probably the time that the sun is out and the temperature begins to get hotter. So stocking them at that time is the best time. And that brings us to the second point, that is the mode of stocking them. So the second way to avoid that is that when you bring them, don't just pour them into the pond. The temperature of the water in the pond could be very cold and affect them. So when you come, acclimatize them. And acclimatization has to do with putting the container in which you transported them in the pond. Leave it there for about 20 to 30 minutes for the water in the container and the water in the pond to neutralize. Gentle open it and allow the water to go in gradually till everything mixes uniformly. Lower the container. So when you lower the container, allow the water in the pond to enter the container, and then it will neutralize everything and allow the fish themselves to swim into the pond. And that is the best way of acclimatizing the fish. And once you have done that, you are good to go. The third thing to do to minimize the effect of harmattan on your fish is to cover the pond during night or early morning. And if I say cover, I am not talking about the normal predators net which you cover the pond. That was to prevent predators from harvesting the fish. It doesn't provide heat. Cover with something that provides heat, either tarpaulin or rubber, or anything that will provide heat for the pond. So that during night time, you cover the pond. And when you do so, more external air that blows and makes the water get cooler will not get direct to the pond. And for that matter, the temperature of the pond in the night will be stable. And that way, you can also ensure that the coldness doesn't affect them. And that you are good to go. The fourth thing to do is to feed your fish at the right time. Normally, we recommend you feed your fish early morning because they don't want to be fed during hot afternoon. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the rules changes. Sometimes the rules changes. So now, this case, early morning it is too cold. The fish are on the bottom of the pond. They don't want to even come out, not to talk of eat. So when you give them feed, probably they will not even mind. So leave and feed them late morning and early afternoon. Yes. So that by that time the sun is out there, the temperature begins to warm up, the water temperature in the pond begins to also get hotter. And even at that time, when you observe, you will see them to be active in the pond and they are now swimming in the surface. And at that time, if you give them feed, they will take. And that brings us to the fifth one, that is feed, reduce the amount of feed you give them. As I mentioned earlier, their feeding behavior changes. They will lose appetite, they will not be active. So if you come and dump them the usual amount of feed that you give them, they are likely not to eat it, and that can give you low quality of water. Now, when you come to feed them, don't dump the feed, just give them small. If they don't respond, don't proceed again. Leave them. Don't assume they'll eat later and leave it in the pond. That is disastrous because if it dissolves in the pond, it increases ammonia. So give them small. If they respond, you add them. When you notice that they are okay, then fine. Even situation where you give them the feed, probably they were eating, they'll give them the feed, and later you find out that they've not eaten it. Don't leave the leftover feed in the pond to decompose in the water. Remove it from the pond because if it decays and decompose, already you are battling with poor water quality because of the coldness of the water. Now, if ammonia also increases, then it becomes disastrous. So the fingerlings or the fish later they will not be able to cope with the water parameter at that time. So they will have no option than to die. So reduce the amount of feed, use the responsive feeding method, and when there's leftover feed, remove from the surface of the pond and you'll be good to go. The same thing you need to be doing is to ensure and maintain good water quality and oxygenation. Now, the coldness of the temperature that is making the water to be cold is poor water quality. Now, if you're not also careful and you're giving them more feed, like I mentioned earlier, and ammonia increases, then the water quality is jeopardized again. So to ensure you have better water quality, first and foremost, reduce the amount of feed you give them, as I said earlier. Now, to ensure better and maintain good water quality, you need to have aerator in your farm. If you can have flotation aeration system, that's very fine. That is why there's the need to have the recycled aquaculture acid, that's the RAS. So you filter the insult particles and you add oxygen. Now, especially the oxygen at this time, because during night time and early morning, that coldness of the temperature also reduces the oxygen level in the pond. So now the fish are cold and they don't also have enough oxygen. What do you think will happen? They'll be prone and vulnerable to infections and diseases. So now, if you have already aeration in your farm, increasing the capacity at this time is very crucial. If you don't have it at all, try to provide one and you'll be good to go. So if you want to do that, if you want to learn how to do your own flotation aeration system, we have a course in the description. Check it out, enroll, and you're good to go. If you want us to come and install the pond for you or the RAS for you, you are good to go. We can't do that for you. So if you ensure this, then you are going to be good and your fish will be healthy and everything will be okay and fine. The seventh one has to do with delaying your stocking. Delaying your stocking or avoiding stocking of fingerlings during this period. In fact, there are a lot of farmers during this period, they don't stock fingerlings. They don't stock small fish. If they already have fish they are growing, they keep to grow. If they don't, they wait till this season is over. So if you are less experienced and you fear that you are likely to lose your fingerlings, you might decide not to stock them during this Harmattan season. However, stocking them too is a win-win case. Let's look at this scenario. Because lesser people stock their fish at that time or at this period, within 6-7 months, that's the time of harvesting, there will not be enough fish in the market. And having fish at that time is a gold mine. So now, those who risk and stock their fingers at this period, they will have fish at that time to sell. So the same applies to you. If you risk and stock your fish, it means at that time when fish are less in the market, you will have fish and you can sell them at premium price and you make good money. So that's why I said it's win-win case. Or you may decide to also not risk and don't stock. And at the end of the day, you don't also have fish, but you didn't risk. Choose for yourself. Anyone is good for you. But let's look at it this way. You have your fish stock. You have done all these things, yet you have been a victim of losing your fish. They are dying, or they are gasping, or they are weak. And you know the Harmattan has affected them. What do you do? Now when the fish are also dying, and you find out that the water is too cold, or is what's affecting them, what you can also do is to quarantine the fish. In fact, if you can get small container like IBC tank or something that can keep them for some days, a week or two, then you remove them from the pond and put them inside. I'll share experience with you. There was a time they stocked fingerlings at Accra, Kasua specifically. The fingerlings were dying in masses. That place, it was Harmattan season, but it was rain time, and the Tapoli ponds were soaked in water. The place was a waterlogged area, and the water was very cold for the fish during night and day or morning. So they were dying. So I recommended that, having visited the farm. So we separated them in IBC tank, and those who separated there, the mortality stopped. We were able to raise them. So that is the quarantine. So if you have difficulties in managing them in your pond, what you should also do is you remove them into a small container and quarantine them. And this farm, it is exactly what we are trying to do now, because we are using other methods. So we also quarantine them in addition, and that will good. We are good to go. You can use antibiotics to boost their immune system, but that's not my recommended one. Secondly, you can also use salt. Either salt bath them or just put the salt in the pond. And that what you can do also is that reduce the water level, dissolve the water, salt in the water, and put it in the pond across. That is also going to boost the immune system. But my recommended one is using the bitter leaves to put or to boost the immune system. This is natural and it is good to go. And I am going to take my time to show you exactly and the best way of applying the bitter leaves. Many beginners do it the wrong way. For instance, I last recommended apply or using bitter leaves to someone. And having sent a YouTube video I made previously about how to apply the bitter leaves, I broke everything down in the video. You can check it out in the channel. Now, either he watched or he didn't, whoever knows. But he just grounded the bitter leaves and come and throw it, dump it in the pond. That's not the effective or the best way. I will take you to the right way. First and foremost, when you are experiencing mortality of your fish, either during Harmattan or not even Harmattan, or they are weak and you want to boost their immune system, I want to give bitter leaves. And that's my recommended one because it's natural, it's organic, and it is healthy for the fish and even human consumption. So it is safer and it has proven to work. We are using it. Most farmers or experienced farmers are using it. You can also use it. What you should do, the best one is first give the fish feed break. The farmer here, that's what I did. Give them feed break. for 24 to even 72 hours, 2 to 3 days. Don't feed them. Now reduce the water level to smallest ground. And remember, this time the water temperature is not hot. So reduce it to a state that the temperature, the hotness will not also affect them. Now, after reduce it that way, get your bitter leaves. Pluck the bitter leaves. Pluck the leaves from the stem. Pluck it. Pluck as much as possible because the concentration should be higher. And depending on the water level in the pot, the more the water, the more the bitter leaf should be because they need to have more concentration for it to work well. After plucking the leaves, put it in a container and add fresh water and wash it thoroughly. Wash it thoroughly. After washing it, you grind it, you mash it, you blend it, whichever way you choose for yourself. But what I usually do is that I get my mortar and pestle, put it in there, and I pound it very well so it becomes fine particles. So now put it in the pestle and mortar and blend. You may blend it, but remember that is electricity consumption. That can also spoil your blender. So I always prefer using pestle and mortar. Then pound it very well. After pounding it, get a clean container and put it in. So when you put it in, put water, clean water, of course, in it. After putting the water, use your hand. Someone can use something to stir. I always use my hand because the bitter leaves is something we consume. It's good. So there's no harm using your hand. It doesn't harm you. So I put my hand. So put your hand and mash everything in the water. After mashing everything, then you squeeze out the fiber or the chaff. This is chaff. There's no need to dump it in the pot. Take that out, the chaff, throw it away. After that, now the water level is now down. Then you come and pour the solution or the liquid into the pot. Don't dump it at one place. Pour across. Pour small here, pour here, till you pour around all the pot. And then after doing that, you will find the fish to be stronger. So leave them. After putting, don't top up the water. Let them swim inside. Depending on the intensity of the disease or their weakness or their mortality, you may leave that same water there. Like I mentioned, if it is not too small that sun can kill them, leave it there and repeat this process for 3-4 days, and you will find them to be strong. So after that, you now top the water. Even after topping the water, don't feed them immediately. Leave them, and then later, when you are going to even feed them, introduce the feed to them slowly till you notice that they are picking up and they'll be okay. Not only during Harmattan season, anytime you are experiencing mortality, this is what you do. My name once again is Abdulaziz Issa, bachelor degree in development education by a fish farmer, and I teach people fish farming and I provide consultancy services. You can contact us to provide you services, or you can follow our page and learn. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe. Please share so that you reach other farmers to benefit. Yes, he asked whether small or big. If you are choosing the big one, the small one. Get another packet like this. It can even be small. This thing we can eat it all. Some people eat it fresh. just want you to observe how we do it. So when we play this one, because we haven't talked about this, the one talk about we do it.
What do you know right now?
No, don't worry. Oh, don't talk. What? No, I'm. So, what did you come my education? So bring this basket. Host are big, but we can manage it. Yeah, the host are big, but it's okay. Don't look for you. So you watch.